everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and we are going to continue our solo playthrough of Scythe. We have the yellow faction here as it makes its way and has landed recently on the factory, taking the first card from the factory deck. We have the white faction over here, which has been slowly moving over and also kind of encroaching on our territories. This is probably the faction which is going to give us the most grief currently, although just recently the yellow faction moved a mech in behind, so we are kind of getting attacked on all fronts here, or at least could be considered surrounded in the central areas. There's some things we really need to focus on in order to get a couple more stars, and I'm going to try to do that during this particular playthrough video. Now, the first thing I want to fix that I forgot about in the last video was at the 35-minute mark, somebody caught the fact that I had not increased the white faction's star tracker up one space for the last card that they had used. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So they should be right here. So that doesn't make any gameplay impact, but I want to make sure that that's corrected. All right, checking out my board, I'm going to go ahead for my action, and I'm going to go ahead and do a produce action. So this is going to cost me quite a bit because I've got all my workers out. It's going to cost me a power, which is not exactly the best because I've got a whole bunch of mechs surrounding me. It's also going to cost me a popularity because, well, I'm just not popular at all in this game. And I'm also going to have to spend a coin. Now, this is my hope is that this will be the last time I need to produce in the entire game. I'm hoping that I can make things work in the future for to get both my mechs out, hopefully with one steel each. If I can get an upgrade done, we'll see if we can actually do that. Might be tougher than I think. We might actually have to do one more produce. I'm not 100% sure. We'll try. So regardless, we got one power taken away, one popularity taken away, a coin taken away, and I can produce on 2 hexes of my choice. So the obvious 2 would be the 2 that I've got workers on. So it's going to be the food way up there, which is going to give me 6 more food. Now the reason that this is important for me is because not only is creating resources a good thing for many different reasons, but the major reason for me is enlisting. I can start getting my enlisting going. Every bit of food that I now have, including the 2 food I have over here, is more than enough to go ahead and do some crazy amount of enlisting. What's scary is that I have a ton of workers over here with a ridiculous amount of resources, and at any point in time this white mech may make an attack on it. So that is scary, and I am putting myself at risk by having this set up the way I do. But at the same time, I've got to do this while I have a chance because things are going to get even worse as the game goes on in terms of fighting and combat. So I'm hoping that this works out, but I've gone ahead and produced there. And the other place I'm going to produce is I'm going to produce in the second hex. That's going to be this one here for the steel. So 2 steel. This is going to allow me to get another mech out on the board, which is badly needed in the future. So I got some steel there as well. Now we're going to come down to the bottom section of this action. It allows me to pay 3 food, and then I can go ahead and I can enlist. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab 3 food off the board. There we go. Put that back in the reserve, and I'm going to go ahead here and enlist. And when I, so I enlist. And when I do so, I'm going to gain 2 coins back. So that's good news, getting some money back. So I have 12 total. This is a 10, 2 ones. I'm also going to be able to enlist, which means I can choose whichever one of these that I want. So obviously going to go for power based on the fact that things have been a bit sketch in terms of my power. I need to get my power, push my power up there as much as I can. Right now for enlisting, I have, when I get to do the enlist, is I get to pick which one of these I want to uncover. So the reason I'm even choosing the 2 power, which I kind of did in advance, was I have to take one of these and put it on top of there. So I kind of gave myself the bonus before I moved the cylinder. But I can either take this one, which gives me a combat card. That could be huge. So that's really a big one for me. And based on the fact that my 2 combat cards, which I have kind of hidden, they're really bad actually. There are 2 and a 2. If you remember from earlier on in the playthrough, I need better combat cards. It's the only way that I stand a chance to potentially fight the white faction. The yellow faction is so far up the board, the chances are if we end up fighting the white faction, I'm going to be hosed anyway. But I have a shot with the white one to contend. So I think taking the enlist action off this is a good idea. So now I have the availability to gain popularity or get cards. I could have gone for money, but money I'm okay with right now. And in terms of power, yeah, power would be really good too. And so that's a really tough It's honestly a really tough call as to whether to go with power or not. But you know what? I'm going to be enlisting again in the future. So let's go with the card because I think it's a bit better bang for buck in the short term. So again, I'm going to take this cylinder and I'll put this on the 2. I've already given myself the 2 power. That's where I moved from 2 to 4. And that's going to be it. That's going to sum up my turn. So hopefully that was useful for me. One other thing that I noticed, guys, when I was taking a look here is that I have this objective card here. Not this one, because this one was stockpiling for the winter, control a territory with 9 or more resource tokens. I'm not really gunning for that. But this one here, I noticed that the Shore Up the Shore one says control at least 5 territories surrounding the same lake at the end of your turn. And I just realized I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and the lake is dead center. So I have 4 territories controlled around this lake right now. If I can get to a potential move in the future where I can maybe move my mechs into, which is what I might want to do, to get them into the areas with my workers and bring them back, because my movement speed has gone up by 1, so I can move my mechs 2 spots when they move. So I'm allowed to do things like move my mech into this space, take everything there, and then move it to another space. That might be a real good thing to do with all this nasty, all these nasty mechs hanging around. But we'll see how it pans out with the cards, because that's the fun part. I don't know how the Automa is going to handle everything I just did or what they're going to do next. Time for the yellow faction to get moving. Let's see what they do. So we have a non-attacking mech move for the yellow faction. So that's not necessarily good, but it's also not bad because they're not going to attack. So I guess in a way that is a plus for us. So we're going to go ahead and get set up to do a non-attacking mech move. So with this particular move, what we're going to be doing is obviously selecting the mech closest to the Automa's base. So in this case, we've got 2 mechs that are sitting inside the yellow faction's base. So the tiebreaker would be normal reading order, but we don't need to worry about that because we have 2 individuals here. So we'll just take one of them. It doesn't matter which. Valid hexes are going to be in the neighborhood of any Automa unit or in the neighborhood of the Automa's base. So again, this is going to be the neighborhood of what we're familiar with in terms of being around all of the current Automa yellow faction units on the board. And we know what the neighborhood means is it's all around those units. There can't be an enemy unit there, wherever we end up going, because again, it's a non-attacking mech move. It's not meant to provoke an attack. And no Automa combat unit other than the one selected can be the one in the valid hex. So first we're going to go ahead and pick up the valid mech. So we're going to take 1 mech away. And we're going to place it in a valid hex, which we've already determined is going to be basically anything surrounding. So it could be here, 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 here. It's kind of basically covering all the outside edges as long as it doesn't go into another faction's area. And it also has to be the shortest distance from an enemy combat unit. So enemy combat units are characters and mechs, not the workers. So this is the fun part. We have to find the one that has the shortest route to enemies. Now, this is the yellow faction we're talking about. So there's blue, obviously, which is me, and white. So which one is it going to be focusing on? Well, currently, white, or if I was to put mine here, which is the furthest up this side of the board it could go, it would be about 2 distance away from my combat unit here, and it would also be a large distance away from the home base, but it's not going to go after mechs in the home base unless there's no other enemy combat units on the board, and there's a whole bunch right here. So this is 2 distance away, so that's something to keep in mind. Valid hex, basically. If I put it here, let's say, this is also 2 away from my character, so this is also a valid hex. Technically, this is a valid hex as well for being close to this one. Or I could put it can't get it here because that's not in the neighborhood of any of my own Automa units. So here's a valid hex. This one here is valid because, again, it's 2 away in either case. So really, there's a number of different places. If I go here, you're getting too far away. So the 3 valid spots right now are here, here, and here. So the tiebreaker for this is the closest to the factory. So that's obviously going to be this one right here because the factory is right here. So that mech is going to teleport and land just like this, giving support to the mech that's already up here as well as being next to the character in the factory controlling it. So as you can see, things are really getting out of hand here in the middle as more stuff moves in. So what we're going to do next is move on to the next part of the card, which is the Automa get stuff. So 4 power is going to be bumped up, and this is actually going to move the yellow faction to 16. They can go no higher, but this is one of the ways that the Automa faction can gain stars outside of their star tracker cards. When they hit these particular stars, they can gain a star just from going up the power track to the top, and this yellow faction has done that. So 1 star will be gained and we placed up here. So they now have 2, and they've tied us for how many stars we currently have out. So that's not good. Next up, we'll take a look at what comes next, which is a worker. There is no workers left to put out for the yellow faction. We can ignore that. And then the next thing here, hey, look at that. You'll notice we got an enlist. So that is going to be a combat card for us. That is huge. So we're going to come up here to the combat deck, which is way up here, combat cards, I should say, and flip this over. And we got a 5. I think 5 is the highest in the game, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's, what is it, 2? Well, I already have 2 2s, so 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think 5 is the highest. There might be a 6. No, I don't think there is. I'm not 100% sure on that. I kind of forget. But I think 5's the highest. So anyway, regardless, we got a 5, which is awesome because we need it badly. We're so far down that track. So if we happen to get into a combat, we have a nice boost there. So that was huge and very smart of us to go ahead and produce. I also want to make mention of the fact that I had a number of people in my previous video pointing me to the fact we should produce next. So I want to thank them for pointing that out because that was kind of the route I was thinking that made the most sense. And look at that. It panned out perfectly. We even enlisted correctly. Now the other thing that's going to happen is the star tracker is going to go up. So we're going to go up to this spot right here for the yellow faction. You can see a couple more turns from here, they're going to be getting another star, which is not good. But that is going to sum up the yellow faction's turn for now. All right, we're coming around to the white faction to see what they're going to do. What do we got here? We have a move of a worker. That's okay. I'm all right with that, so that's not bad. And a couple other things are going to happen here. So let's put that down and follow suit with what we're going to do. So the first thing is we're going to be moving a worker. This is going to be just a regular move, and we definitely have the workers needed to do this. So the first thing we'll do is pick the worker which is closest to the base. We've got 3 of them here for the white faction. The neighborhood of any Automa unit is a valid hex, so this is talking obviously about the white faction only. In the neighborhood of the Automa's base is valid. In no enemy unit can be there, and no Automa worker other than the one selected can be there. So we'll go ahead and pick up the selected worker, and we're going to go ahead and choose a destination hex. Valid hexes would be things like right here, right here. I don't think there's anywhere else because, yeah, I think that right. So the valid, oh, sorry, some of them could actually be down here as well. Things got really cluttered over here, so they're not going anywhere over there. In terms of choosing a destination hex, it's going to be a valid hex first off. It has to be in the neighborhood of the most Automa units is the key point there, and not in the neighborhood of enemy combat units. So right now we don't have to worry about being in the enemy combat units because even being here, it wouldn't be in the neighborhood of enemy combat because workers are not considered such. If I stand here with the worker, there is 3 in the neighborhood right now there, so that's pretty high. This one only has 1 because bases don't count. This one right here has 1. This one has 2. This one here has 3. So it looks like this one right here is the one that has the highest number of units around it. So that's where that worker is going to move to. So we've now done that successfully because 3 didn't have any ties involved. So that was pretty clean. Next up, we're going to come down here, take a look at the next thing, which is the Automa get stuff. They're going to get 2 more power, which is not good because we continue to boost up the other Automas. I might have to start fighting the white one to avoid them getting a star. They gain a worker as well, but they have no workers left. Haha, sadly their character still hasn't come out on the board. And we do get an enlist bonus because we do have the popularity revealed here. So that's awesome. Our popularity will go back up after spending 1 to produce last turn. So that worked out pretty good. And we have a star tracker bump up. Oh dear, this is getting super close. White faction is ready to get a star come the end of the next turn, which is not good. So that's going to wrap up the full first round. We're going to come around to my turn, and hopefully we can try to do something strategic in this upcoming round. Well, this might be the most obvious choice ever. I'm absolutely going to bolster, and that's because I'm going to be able to get a top and bottom action here. So by bolstering right now, I'm going to pay 1 coin, which I'll gladly do because the benefits are going to be huge First off, I was thinking originally that I might need to go after a combat card at some point because of how weak my combat cards were, but we got really lucky and got a 5 on the last pull thanks to the enlist bonus here we got uncovered last time we produced. That was fantastic. So because of that, I don't need to go for a combat card to hope to get a better number in an upcoming fight. It's better for me to bolster for 3, which would get my attack power from 4 to 7, which is actually the max I could spend in a fight anyway. And that keeps me more on the tail of the white faction, which keeps me within range to deal with them or potentially fight them. So I've done that now. I've paid my coin. I have 11 coins left, just so you guys are aware. The other thing to be aware of is I've also kept 1 encounter token, because that's the only encounter token I've actually got in the entire game. And we don't want to forget about this bonus here for actually going ahead and building buildings near encounter areas. So if we go ahead and do this, then we'll go ahead and end up getting a bonus. So I just don't want to, I want to make sure you guys aren't confused by this, but basically I've kept this encounter token here to remind myself I got an encounter, but I really don't need to keep this here. What would be more important is to be tracking essentially buildings. If I can potentially get later on, this is not to do with my action I'm doing currently, but later on get enough to get 4 wood. I have 3 right now on the board. The 3 comes from my character. I could build a building, and as long as I do it adjacent to an encounter symbol, it doesn't have to be could even be the symbol itself, and doesn't have to have an encounter token on it or off it. Just needs to be beside the symbol. I can gain some victory points at the end. So that's something to keep in mind as kind of a quick way to gain a little bit extra. Anyway, going back to the actions here, so we did the top section of this. I bolstered, I jumped myself up to 7. We're now going to go to the bottom, and I have 2 steel that I got from producing. So here's where things get interesting. I really, really, really want to build another mech. I think it'd make a lot of sense. This would also make a lot of sense because this one says, before combat, if you pay 1 power, opponent gets -2 power. So that's really huge because you're basically negating some of their power, like you're costing yourself a power to kind of adjust it by 1. Not bad. This one over here allows you to move across rivers to forests and mountains, which is nice for movement purposes. Very tough to decide which one's better, but currently based on how the fights are turning out, the fact that both of the mechs are on lakes, I already have the ability to be seaworthy. I'm already able to get onto lakes. I don't think I need this Riverwalk one yet, so I'm going to go for the artillery one. So we're going to go ahead and grab artillery. I'm going to pay my 2 steel. These 2 steel is going to go away. And I'm going to take this mech now, and I'm going to place it right here because the area needs some protection because of how many resources and workers are there. And this is a threat, and I want to have some additional backup in case there is some type of fight at some point. Maybe when we do a move action, I can clump those things up even more to help myself out in a fight. So, with all that being said, the other thing I don't want to forget about is the fact that because I deployed a mech, I also get 3 coins. So I'll take a 3 coin and I'll add that to my supply. So now I've got 14 coins. So that's not bad. And that's going to wrap it up. That's my turn. I'm liking how this is going so far. The only people that are unguarded now are these guys over here, but I'm really not as concerned about them and might be able to do on the next turn, do a move, pick them up, bring them over, do something like that. Although I can't cross this way. I'd have to, well, that's the thing. I might have to just move into here and have a combat. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting how this pans out because I got to make some wise decisions on who I fight next and how I go about it. But that's it for my turn anyway. We're going to move on to the yellow faction. Let's see what the yellow faction plans to do to me this turn. We got ourselves an encounter factory action. Interesting. So we currently have the character right now sitting on the factories. So this is going to be an interesting one. So what's going to happen with this encounter factory action is, first off, you're going to select your Automa character, find your valid hexes. In the neighborhood of any Automa units is valid. The factory is valid. We're already on it, but we've already taken a card from there, and it won't continue to take any more than 1 card, so it's already done its job there. The next thing it's valid is a hex with an encounter token. So currently we actually have 1 hex here that's got an encounter token beside this mech. We also have 1 hex here that has an encounter token beside this this worker. And those are the only ones that are currently adjacent to any or within the neighborhood of any of the Automa units. So first off, we're going to pick up our character from the factory. We're going to find one of those valid hex. Both of them are valid, so now we have to do a tiebreaker. Which one's closest to the factory? It's going to be this one right here. So this is the one it's going to take. It's going to pop in here and steal away the encounter token. So now that's 1 less encounter token I can go after. Now the only encounter token left on the board that's even remotely close to me is way up here. Don't know if I'm going to be able to get to that or if it's even worth sending somebody over there to get that anyway. So it probably will get eaten up or just never taken based on how crowded things have gotten over here. But just wanted to mention that we've gone ahead now and done the encounter factory action. So we're going to move on with the rest of the card. So the rest of the card has us doing, because we ignore the rest of the top section because we did the first action. We take a look at that right there. That symbol is not the yellow faction, so we will not be doing what's in brackets there. But we will be putting a worker on the board, but we have no workers to do, so that won't be happening either. They will be gaining 2 coins, and the Star Tracker card will be going up. So they've just made some more money, which is unfortunate. So we're going to go ahead here and give them 2 more coins. What I'm going to actually do is take 3 from them. I'm going to give them a 5 because they don't spend their money anyway, and it's likely that I'm going to need those single ones for myself. So they've got a total of 17 coins now, which is a lot. Star Tracker card is going to go up, which is going to push them 1 away from another star, and that's going to simply do it for the yellow faction. Okay, white faction, let's see what you got. This is the one I'm most worried about based on the fact that they're close by. First up off the top of the card, we've got a faction icon that does not match our current faction, which is white, so that's not going to happen. Next up is the exact same symbol we had in the other one. It's going to be the encounter one, but guess what? That doesn't happen because our character on the white faction is killed thanks to my actions earlier on in the game. And this one here is a move character action, which also cannot happen because I have killed off the character. So that whole top section is completely ignored, which is awesome. The downside is they're going to bolster some more and add a worker. There's no more workers for them to add on, but they will bolster 3 more. So 1, 2, 3, now they're way up there. So they're likely going to get a star from that as well, unless I attack them. The enlist bonus is a card. It's a combat card. So that actually is going to allow us to get another combat card. So I'm going to reach over here and pick one up. What did we get? We got a 4. That's good too. That's actually not bad. Well, I guess this is kind of finally balancing out for me because the first 2 I got were garbage at 2. So now I've got really good chances. Maybe I should start initiating some combat here really soon. So we've done the enlist bonus. We need to move the Star Tracker, and look at that. That Star Tracker is going to put a white star on the board for the white faction, which is going to put us all in a 3-way tie for the number of stars that we currently have in play. Ouch. Okay, so now that's going to end up this round, and we're going to go right back to my turn and see what we can do from here. Well, that's a bit embarrassing. I just noticed actually that the number of power cards that are actually available, their totals, and the amount of them in the deck are listed right there on the board. So earlier on this playthrough when I was going, I wonder if there's a 6 out there, there is not. I thought there was for some strange reason, but I believe I'm thinking of a different game. It only goes from 2 to 5 here in Scythe, so I just want to clear that up because in the moment earlier on this video, I did seem confused, and I was in that moment. So it is referenced up there in the top right of the game board, and now we're going to move to my turn. All right, so this is a really important turn. There's a lot going on here. One of my thoughts originally was to try to go for the objective as well as pondering whether I should go after the combat star. If I initiate a combat and I happen to win, I get a star, so that's one bonus for going ahead and trying to do that, which I'd probably go after this white mech right here to get rid of him. The other way I could get a star is to go here, potentially use a move action, but really the move action will be wasted because I can move up to 3 different hexes, 2 spaces each, and when you're talking about my characters or my mechs anyway, in terms of the +1 speed. So I could kind of shuffle things around here and hopefully create a grid of 5. If I did that, then I could turn in my shore up the shore objective card. That would give me a star. So there's a number of different ways I can get a star on this particular round. The other way too, in the future hopefully, is to get a mech out, which I need 2 steel for. I can likely just trade to get those 2 resources, do that later on. What I was hoping to do is try to get some more oil in order to do some more upgrades, to try to get my upgrades done, but there's quite a few of those I need to do. I was thinking that I could move into here as part of my objective to get 5 territories around a lake and go after this guy to get some resources, but you have to take a look at their prior card that wasn't used for combat, and whatever's sitting in there for resources is what they have, which means they have nothing. So if I was looking at the yellow faction, they have 1 resource. So if I was to take out one of the yellow workers on this turn, I'd at least get 1 resource based on whatever type is here. But if I go after the white faction, I don't even get anything. So it's just a loss of popularity for no reason. So that's just not worth it to me at all. So what I'm probably going to do is initiate some combat. I'm going to probably go after this guy in the lake. And because I'm seaworthy and I can head in there, I'm going to probably send 2 mechs in there after him just to make sure that I clean him up. So what I'll probably do here is I'm going to do some movement for sure, I think. Just debating how I want to go about this. The other thing I have to think about is that I can go ahead and pay a power to get -2 for the combat round, so I can really hamper him. So that's where I'm going, do I really need to, with 7 power here, a 5 card, do I really need to move 2 mechs in, or is that overkill? That's kind of where I'm struggling. I'd like to just move 1 mech in. That would be great. I could potentially do that. I'm just trying to think here. If I was to go ahead and move... I'm trying to think if there's a way that I can do this, and I don't know for sure if there is. No, I don't think there really is any way I can get this done. I can't keep 5 territories and attack the mech at the same time. Because every time you move one of your forces into an area with a worker, they have to stop their movement completely. So it hampers you kind of moving things around quite a bit. So in terms of movement, I got 3 movement to spend. One of them is plain the obvious. You guys are probably screaming at the screen already. That is to move my character from here to the factory, because by doing so, I take control of the factory, plus I get a factory card. So there's no reason not to do that. So I'm going to bring my character from here with the resources to the factory and sit him right there so I'm controlling it. That's kind of the obvious one. The next one, now of course this is going to be a problem for me because the white faction is going to eventually want to get in here, so that'll probably incite another type of battle. But the yellow faction's already been in the factory, doesn't really want a factory, it can't get a factory card anymore anyway, but it could still incite some type of battle because there's mechs all around me and everything. But in terms of other movement, I've moved 1 character so far. The next one I'm going to move is probably this one, so I'm going to probably have this guy here move into this space. The question I really have to determine now is, do I move this guy in as well to do double, to be able to put in 2 combat cards into the attack? I'm going to leave him here. I'm going to move him, but I'm moving him right there, and that's it. Okay, now what else can I do here? Yeah, that's about it. So I guess what we'll do first is we'll resolve combat, and then I'll deal with the factory. Okay, so what I've done here is I've actually selected my battle card that I want to use. I've selected how much power I want to use. You might notice that I'm only using 4 and not the full 7. Because I got a strategy. I'm going to be using my ability right here called Artilleries, which says before combat, if you pay 1 power, opponent gets -2. So I'm going to pay this before combat because that then caps me going into the combat of how much I can use. I don't want to use all of it. Remember the first time I did combat, I blew all of it on attack. It was a little overkill. Really, when I have a 5 and a 4, I've got 9, but then I'm also minusing 2 away from him, so it's almost like I have 11. So it's pretty good that way in terms of how much power I have. I think that's more than enough, and if it's not, well, I'm not too worried about it because I'm not losing any workers. If I do win this, the good thing is I will get a star because I initiated the combat and I won, so hopefully that pans out. So at this point in time, I've chosen my combat power, my combat cards. Now we have to go ahead and draw an Automa card to find out what exactly is going to be happening. We're turning it sideways, so here comes the fun part. All right, what do we got? So the Automa card is, and he currently is for power, he is 13. So that is going to give a 7 power, and then no Automa combat cards, I guess. Actually, that's really weird. Oh, that does happen, yeah. Because even the last one here, before that had 2, so there's no Automa combat cards added into this fight. So he just goes ahead and pays 7, and that's it. Wow. So that's crazy. So I guess I won. That was pretty straightforward. That was awesome. So I will take that win. So my my second star, sorry, for combat goes up here. Whenever you defeat a mech or a character that comes from the faction, or an Automa faction, you don't put it in the home base. You bring it back to the character board. So I've knocked a white mech out. Haha. So all of you that were voting for the white mechs are getting destroyed. And of course I lose my card as well, and I also got to dip my power down. Technically, actually, he spent 7, but this says before combat and your opponent gets -2. Now, my understanding would be that I would still go ahead and knock him down 7 for how much he spent. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He'd be down here. I would lose 4, so I would drop down to 2, and that's kind of where we would sit. Now, that's going to resolve all of that. The next thing we have to talk about is divvying out any combat cards and potentially resources in the area. So first off, we fought on a lake. So there was potential that there could have been resources there, and there would have been if we had have actually been on a location that could have provided resources. We would have gotten 2, but a lake resource or a lake doesn't provide any resources, so that's that. That's pretty easy and straightforward. So next up, we'll just clear up the combat cards. So because the white Automa faction revealed or used power from the power track or revealed a card, in this case they used power, they will gain a combat card when they lose. So this combat card is going to go on top of their deck. I don't know what it is. They actually have an insane amount of combat cards now, but the crazy thing was they weren't able to pull any on that last attack. So I did get really, really lucky. So that's going to basically end my movement action. So that's going to have everything resolved combat-wise. The only other thing left is the factory. So we're going to come here and take a look at the factory cards where I get to choose a new action. You guys, for the first time, get to see what these are all about. So these are pretty cool. So we've got a couple here, and they're going to obviously be for different things. So these are going to give you a legitimate additional action space, which is you can essentially put beside your action mat here, or player mat, which you can see is about the same size as one of the little quadrants. And when you go ahead and do one of these things, you're going to get that result. So for this, oh my goodness, that one's crazy. So this one here, if you pay 2 coins, this I think allows you to build something. Is that true? Because that seems crazy powerful. You also gain some popularity, so you're really like industrious, I guess. You're just building things. And then you also get some movement at the bottom. So it looks like 1 unit gets to move 2 spaces. That's really good. If I come over here, if you pay a resource of any kind, you gain a combat card and 2 for bolstering, and you get this. That's pretty good too. That's actually really good. Man, this is tough. And then the producing one. So I think the producing one is the one I'm gonna shy away from because I'm already maxed out my producing. So that's just one that doesn't really make too much sense for me. To be totally honest, the building and the popularity one's really pulling me in because I could use coins to put buildings out. The buildings would help me for sure. If I built them around an encounter, I could gain bonus points, which are handy if I happen to get enough of them. I just don't know if it's worth it, though. That's the tough part. I also gain popularity from it. On the right, though, you get combat cards and bolstering plus movement every single time. So that would see me going up the track really fast and would protect me. That kind of seems better to me, to be honest, is the protecting one. So I think I'm going to go that route. I think I'm going to go with this one. This one seems really cool, and I'm really tempted to go for that, but I think I'm going to go with this one because then I can just pay additional resources to go ahead and do this action. If I'm looking at my listing, I only need 6 more food to get 3 for each of these enlist actions, and currently I have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there's 2 food I could expend to potentially do this action twice, even in the near future, without having to do anything about it. Okay, I've thought about it enough, and I think I am going to go with this one, the one I first picked, because with this one, I would really need a ton of wood. Because, yes, it would allow me to go ahead and do a build action, which is really cool, but I'd be spending a ton of coins, and it also, end up being points at the end of the day, and is on top of that, the popularity would be kind of a nice benefit as well, but I'm not really gunning to build buildings. That's not really been my strategy so far, so I'd rather bolster to protect myself from what likely will be a ton of attacks, and to keep my workers and everybody alive and well and continue moving forward, plus maybe get up the power track. Even though I'm insanely low on that, this could help with in combination of the regular bolster action. So I think I'm going to go with this one. So again, tough choice. I could see how both of those could be very, very good. I'm going to take my objective cards and actually move them out of the way for a bit. I'm going to probably put them over here to make some space. And I'm going to take this new card here without hopefully destroying everything around it, if I can pick it up. And I'm going to add this to the end of my board. So basically I have a brand new action to spend right here. So that's going to sit on the end, something that I can do, and also gives me some movement, which is completely amazing, having some additional movement there. So that's going to be it, because when I went ahead here and I did my movement there and resolved everything I just did, actually I didn't move my large action marker to this space. I should have done that. But I can't do this. I don't have any oil to do this bottom half of this action. So that's essentially it. I've moved all my characters, got a new factory. I took the factory action and got the card. I did some combat in the lake and won it, which is surprising based on the fact the white faction was so much more powerful than me. I'm in a really good position to move forward. I could potentially attack maybe this worker next to gain resources to try to build my last mech. All those things are options, so things are going well, but guess what? It is now time for the yellow faction, and I think they might have some other thoughts in mind. All right, yellow faction, let's see what pain you're ready to bring to me now. Okay, so, oh dear, this is bad. Okay, so we've got ourselves an attack or move to attack action. This is going to result in some pain. So basically this one here is called a attack move, versus a combat unit. So it's all based on whether they have enough power with that particular mech or character to do this. So as of right now, we're going to be selecting an Automa combat unit. We're doing it based on the condition that the Automa's power is greater than 7, and the yellow faction's it's way up at 16, so that's easy. Currently, we're selecting the Automa combat unit that's closest to the Automa base, so that is actually going to be this mech right here. It's going to be the one that's going to be selected to move out. It's going to be in the neighborhood of any Automa unit or in the neighborhood of the Automa's base, and it has to contain an enemy combat unit, of course, because they're making a combat-based move. First, we're going to pick up the selected combat unit, so that's going to be the mech that's in the home base. We'll pick that up off the board. We're going to find a valid hex. Well, the valid hexes likely here are going to be... It's going to be this guy, this guy, this guy, basically every one of my guys on the board, because there's no white mechs that are currently on the board. They're only on home bases, so that's bad. And it's going to be a valid hex has to be fewest enemy combat units. So basically, fewest meaning the number on a certain hex. And currently, we only have 1 on all these different hexes. In order to tie break, because that's what's going to happen, because I have so many different combat units on the board, it's going to be closest to the factory, which is going to sadly be the one that's going to be my character, and it has 3 wood here for them to steal or destroy, basically, because they don't use resources if they happen to kill me. So this is going to have the mech actually be making a combat move towards me in the factory, and we're going to have ourselves a battle. So this is going to be interesting. So again, we have to do what is normal. Well, we have to go ahead and actually go through the motions of a regular combat, so we might as well start that right now. Okay, so this is going to be real fun. So we've got my faction here. I've gone ahead and chosen what I want to do. Currently I only have 2 power to spend, and I have a 4 card. So the only way I can tip the scales to help me out is to do this artillery move again, which says before combat, if you pay 1 power, opponent gets -2. So I'm going to pay this in advance to minus the enemy by 2, hoping that will help me. And then of course my total can the total power that I can actually put in the fight now is only 1 at max, plus the 4 that I'm going to put in as a card. So I've got 5 here total against him, and so whatever his number is minus 2 basically. In terms of what the yellow faction is going to be putting into the fight, we flip a card to find that out, which is what I'm terrified about. And it is I thought it was a 5 for a second, but it's the yellow faction. They got 16, so they're going to be 14 plus, which means it's a 7. It'll be -2 from my artillery strike, which brings it to 5, which is a tie. But guess what, guys? Attackers win ties. So I have just lost my first combat. That is not good. Okay, so the other thing to notice here too, I didn't mention this, there is 2 combat cards here I forgot about to even mention. So on top of that, he would be getting 2 pulls from the combat cards if he had them, which you can see the yellow faction has none. They didn't even start the game with any, and they haven't gained any yet. So that's one of the reasons why they don't have any yet. So yeah, bad news all around. We still lost to them, which is not good. So we're going to have to do what we normally do here. We'll have my character, because I'm controlling it. It goes back to my home base, not my faction mat. All the resources that were there are destroyed, so I don't have any chance to build anything there. Now the yellow faction actually owns the factory again, or at least is owning it currently, so that's a problem. On top of that, I expended all of my power. I do gain a combat card for that, though, for using that. So I'll take a look. It was a 3, so that's not bad. It's not good either. I lose my 4 card, which I paid for. Or I shouldn't say paid for, but I used. My dial goes away. The enemy won its first combat, so it's going to get a star. This is another thing that the enemy can do. It can gain stars from combat and from the power track. Other than that, it all comes from the star tracker sheet. Geez, this is not good. Okay. So that was that. There's no resources to gain from the factory again, as I mentioned. Yellow faction's already got that. In terms of yellow, they went ahead and spent 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down to 9. So that's bad. I mean, it doesn't really matter how low they go because, well, it does, because it makes up for how much the power they can use later, but they still got the star already. So we'll continue on with the card that we had pulled originally. So that was the top section. So we've done this. Now they're going to bolster 3. So they're going to go back from 9 to 12. They're also going to give us an enlist bonus of a popularity. So that's good news. That's about the only good thing we got. So we're up to 3 now. So if we can get up 1, 2, 3, 4 more popularity, we go to the next rung for scoring points at the end of the game, which would be huge. And they go up on the star track. And wouldn't you know it, if they go up on the star track, they go to the next star, and bam, just like that, they've got another star, and they are now swinging the game and winning with 4 stars, at least in terms of the stars they're winning. They're also winning, it looks like, positionally on the map, too. They own a ton of territories and really have themselves well established. The white faction seems to be crushed at the moment, based on what I did to them, but it looks like the yellow faction is having a good time. So I think that covers everything. Don't think I missed anything else that I need to cover there with that battle. And now we're going to move over to the white faction. Okay, we're going to go ahead with the white faction here. This is going to actually end off the video, the last move. And, oh my goodness, are you serious? Is this actually going to happen? Oh no, it doesn't. It doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen by 1 power. They're at 6 power, so they don't actually match up to the 7 needed. The condition of this particular action is that the auto power has to be greater than or equal to that number, and they are not. So because of that, they won't be doing an attack. If they had of guys, that would have actually sent, just so you guys are aware of this white mech to the factory, and it would have gone after the yellow faction, which would have been the fight, first Automa on Automa fight of the game. But we just avoided that by just barely. The next one that's going to pop in here is a combat involving a worker. So this is going to be interesting as well, because I don't think we've had this one pop up just yet, but now we can actually go through how this one actually works. So this is called an attack move versus a worker. So the first thing it's going to be the you're going to select the Automa combat unit close to the base. So it's going to be this guy right here. The mech is going to be chosen in this case. It's going to be anything in the neighborhood of any Automa unit. Of course, it's controlled by the white faction. In the neighborhood of any of the Automa's base, it has to contain an enemy worker, and it can be no enemy combat units. So because I happen to have this mech in here with these workers, these guys are off limits, because this is a attack move versus worker, and basically anything else is protected. So the only one that's valid now is this one here, because it's within the neighborhood and it's unprotected. So what's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and pick up the mech from the white faction. We're going to choose the valid hex, which is only this one. It's going to be, and it also comes down to it picking, if it was a tiebreaker, of course, if you're choosing your destination hex, it's going to go after a valid hex, and of course we only have one really right now that's actually adjacent or in the neighborhood of the white faction, because again, mine has a mech in it, so it doesn't count for this. And it's going to also be the most resources, but in this case, it can be 0, or, well, if there is no other option, it can be a hex with 0 resources. But in this case, because the Automa doesn't deal with resources, the resources gained come from cards, and I'll explain that in a second. You guys have seen it before already, though. So the tiebreaker is close to the factory. We don't have to worry about a tiebreaker. This mech is going straight for this worker. So this is automatic devastation. So this worker is killed off. Now, the thing that's crazy about this is that the worker will basically get taken away or taken off the game board. Popularity isn't adjusted because the Automas never change their popularity like they would if they were a human player. So this Automa worker, if I'm not mistaken, goes back to the home base. I will double check that actually to be sure it doesn't go back to their actual mat. I got a funny feeling it actually might, so I'm going to put it there because I think it actually does go back to their mat. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and actually that's pretty much it, because the Automa does not gain any resources, so it doesn't use them, so we don't have to go to the situation where we look at the side of the card to determine if there's any resources there, like we would if I attacked an Automa worker in a spot. So it basically just jumped in there and crushed that that worker without any worry whatsoever. So that's quick, easy, and finished. So with that being said, we have now completed, where is my card? Here we go. We've now completed the middle section of that top row. We're obviously not going to do the end of it, and they're going to bolster. So the white faction is in fact going to bolster, and so that's going to bump them up by 3. Remember, these guys haven't got the power track one yet, so they're gunning to get to the top. The next thing that's going to happen is we are going to get an enlist bonus. So that popularity thing is really coming back to help us. Now we're at 4. I'm really hoping we can get into the second section here. That's my goal. And as you can see, see another star, so this is going to bump them to here. So now they're at that particular spot on the board. So that's pretty much it. That's actually going to wrap up this video. Things got very, very different. We have very much a very different layout to the board now. Obviously, we messed up the white faction's plans very big, or we definitely threw a wrench into their plans, I should say. They then started to kind of mess with the yellow faction, which is strange, but it's interesting because I was actually really hoping that the yellow faction and the white faction would have a brawl in the factory, but that might still happen. At the same time, I'm still gunning to hopefully get my movement around potentially my lake spots and maybe grab that objective star would be smart. Another one that's really close to being complete for me is just getting my last mech out. If I can do that, then that will give me a star. So I have an objective that can give me a star, a mech that can give me a star. I've already got both my combat stars. So if I get the objective and the mech out, I only need one more star after that. And I'd probably just continue focusing on enlisting. So all I'd have to do is do this produce action. Now this is the downside of continuing to do the produce action to get enlists, is that I have to lose a power, a popularity, and a coin every single time, and that is going to severely hurt my chances of getting up this power track, or not power track, but popularity track. So it's kind of an interesting balance in this game how this is all going to pan out, but you can see I can offset it a little bit. I'll actually be able to offset it all the way if I can get the first enlist, because I can gain 2 popularity right here. So that could offset doing the produce action twice, losing 2 popularity to finish another star. So actually, that's not bad. Maybe I wouldn't, maybe that's okay. Maybe it's still doable. Anyway, let me know in the comments below, what would you do next if you were me? Here is my current setup. Here's where the action marker basically sits. At the same time, I should say, I've also got a factory action here on the side that's worth talking about because it allows me to bolster and gain cards, but it may not be the focal point of what I'm trying to do anymore. In terms of the yellow faction, they've got their thing going. They've actually pumped out more stars than anybody else and could potentially trigger the end of the game faster than any other faction. But we also have the white faction coming in from behind here that has been brutally beaten up by losing their majority of their mechs and their characters, and now only has a single mech on the board. So they've lost a lot of ground really quick. So who's going to win this? I couldn't tell you. I don't even know how I sit right now or how I feel about what's going on, but I can tell you it's exciting and I'm enjoying it. Hope you guys are enjoying it as well. Thank you so much for your feedback. Let me know in the comments below if I missed anything. I'll see you in the next episode. As always, keep on rolling solo.